Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I got a hilarious thing to do with Cory Booker, and there's a sad dumpling spotting and another celebrity, Bob Saget, type of a death, a Bob Saget update, because the guy just won't go away even after death. I mean, he's more, relevant now all of a sudden. So I'm in the editing portion of this video. I usually don't interrupt this early on. Unless I have to fix the greetings. Once in a while, the greetings things get cut off. But anyways, as it turned out, the Cory Booker thing took a lot longer than I thought, and I got a little bit of headache and a little bit tired today, so I'm not going to get to the Amy Schumer, the other stuff, the Bob Saget, a few more celebrity things. I'll get to those tomorrow. But the Cory Booker thing to me is hilarious, and that's coming in a little bit. And I've done this piece already on CNN about Russia and this whole thing. So just a big video today. And big movement in the World War III business. So let's start off here. I think my wife sent me this. This is JoJo Magoo, and he's talking. You can see all the military personnel. So this is JoJo Magoo talking to military personnel about the Ukraine. And then he drops kind of a bombshell here.
Spent a lot of time in Ukraine when I was a senator and vice president. I've spoken to the Rada in the days when they, in fact, didn't have what you'd call a democracy, and was there in the Maidan when the former leader had to take off and head into Russia. And but the Ukrainian people have a lot of backbone. They have a lot of guts.
They got a lot of guts and backbone. They're full of guts and they're all guts and backbone. It's all guts, no heart, no lungs, just all guts. And their backbone is 4 times bigger than the normal backbone. It's like it's the size of a basketball pole, right? A flagpole, right? So they got these huge backbones and guts. That's all guts and backbone. No brains, really small brains, no, barely any heart. But the size of their guts, I mean, let me tell you, and that backbone.
And I'm sure you're observing it. And I don't mean just the military, we've been trained in since back when Russia moved into in the southeast Ukraine, but also the average citizen. Look at how they're stepping up. Look at how they're stepping up. And you're going to see when you're there, and some of you have been there. You're going to see women. Young people stand in the middle in front of a damn tank.
Just stand in front of a damn tank with all those guts and backbone. You guys, you American soldiers, I wish you had half the backbone and a third of the guts that these standing in front of tank Ukrainians have.
Just saying, I'm not leaving. I'm holding my ground. They're incredible.
I missed the part. I got too into my own guts and backbone jokes I missed the whole important part here.
Look at how they're stepping up. And you're going to see when you're there, and some of you have been there.
You're going to see when you're there. When we send you in there to fight the Russians in World War III, when we send you in there, you're going to see, let's see it again here.
And you're going to see when you're there, and some of you have been there. You're going to see women. Young people stand in the middle in front of a damn tank.
You're going to see it. Like, instead of you guys fighting, you guys are going to watch as they stand in front of a tank when you guys are in there with your... Are they going to stand in front of your tanks? What about the insurgents, the so-called insurgents in Iraq, when they stood up as people and they had backbone and guts? You didn't, compliment them. You called them the T word and all these things. But here he is, telling these American soldiers, you're going to Iraq.
Citizen,
Ukraine.
How they're stepping up. Look at how they're stepping up. And you're going to see when you're there. Some of you have been there. You're going to see women, young people stand in the middle in front.
You're going to see when you guys are there. So, he might have been having one of his JoJo moments, or he's letting the cat out of the bag. I think. Given all the other things I'm going to show you, it seems pretty clear to me they're letting the cat out of the bag. They want to send troops in. They're just looking for some sort of false flaggy type of thing to send troops in. They want troops. And if troops end up if we were end up in World War III with Russia, it's because this MNFer was told we need to do it. Big Giant Colossal Cursor knows. Yeah, MNFer, we know that you were ordered, you puppet, to make this happen, because that's the only reason it should happen, because it's going to be, the end of life that we know it. Of course, there's a divine reason. I mean, the heartfulness meditation I've talked about, there's, nuclear power will ruin this world. So there's a need for cleansing of the, whatever it is. That, the end of our civilization there's divine reasons as well. But still, this guy, this lying MNFer, just let the cat out of the bag. These guys are going to go to the Ukraine and watch young women stand in front of tanks. Aside from JoJo Magoo telling everyone that they are going to go telling these soldiers you're going to end up in Ukraine very soon, he now has something else to warn about, something to be scared of. Cyber attacks. The cyber attacks are coming.
The administration has issued new warnings that based on evolving intelligence, Russia may be planning a cyber attack against us.
They may be, but we're on to it. We can't stop it. We can do nothing to stop it, but we know about it. So don't think that we're not doing our job, because we can't prevent it, but we can know about it. And we can say, hey, you're about to kick me in the face. And even though they're still going to kick me in the face, I knew about it beforehand. I couldn't move my face. I couldn't put hands up and block the kick, but I knew about it. And it makes it better when you know you're going to get kicked in the face than when you don't. Like, that's just how it is.
As I said, the magnitude of Russia's cyber capacity is fairly consequential.
Yeah, there's no joke over there. They're way better than us.
And it's coming.
Just like the Ukrainians and their massive guts and backbones, these guys can run circles around us with their cyber capacity.
The federal government is doing its part to get ready. But under U.S. law, as you all remember, the private sector, all of you, largely decides the protections that you will or will not take.
Exactly. So, because you have these privacy things and you don't want us getting access to your data, you companies and you private individuals, and so we can't do anything for you. We can't protect you because you guys got to protect yourself. If you're a good patriot, you would allow us to, you give us all your passwords and everything. And you just let us run roughshod over your personal data so we can protect it from the Russians, because we're way more trustworthy.
In order to protect your sources. But let me be absolutely clear about something. It's not just in your interest that are at stake when there's potential use of cybersecurity. It is the national interest at stake.
Exactly. So give up your freedom and your privacy and your passwords, because, it'll be your fault, not ours.
And I would respectfully suggest it's a patriotic obligation for you to invest as much as you can in making sure, and we will help in any way.
We will herd. You hear that? He just said we will herd.
And we'll help in any way.
We will herd you. I mean, help you in any way possible. We're going to herd you guys all into female. I mean, help you guys with your cybersecurity. Somebody take the microphone away from this MNFer. He's given up the whole game here. He's like, it's Dementia Joe.
That you have built up your technological capacity to deal with cyber attacks.
So the cyber thing.
First, to protect your own companies. Second, it provides as providers of critical services that Americans rely on, from power to clean water. And finally, your role you can play in helping secure every American and every American's privacy. For example,
privacy from the Russians. The Russians can't get access to your data, but if we do, it's fine. But privacy from the Russians, because they want to know about what you're doing on Facebook.
Banks can turn on cybersecurity by default for every customer, so America's financial data is safe. And we're prepared to help you, as I said, with any tools and expertise we possess if you're ready to do that.
Because we did such a good job. Remember when the DNC got hacked?
But it's your decision.
And Podesta got hacked. But, we're good at it. We know about things. We got plenty of tools. I mean, that's what I say about him all the time. He's a tool, and he's got plenty of tools working with him.
As to the steps you'll take, and your responsibility to take them, not ours.
It's on you and not ours. It's yours and not ours. So right after that, this person who's in charge of this, I don't know what her name is. I've covered her before, I think.
This afternoon, the president released a statement and fact sheet regarding cyber threats to the homeland, urging private sector partners to take immediate action to shore up their defenses against potential cyber.
I covered her, I think, about this very same subject. They put out a warning. She's in charge of this in some way, and she does these weird expressions. Watch her weird expressions. They're also weird. They're like, you know, not real people.
Their defenses against potential cyber attacks.
She has these weird smiles.
We've previously warned about the potential for Russia to conduct cyber attacks against the United States, including as a response to the unprecedented economic costs that the U.S. and allies and partners impose in response to Russia's further invasion of Ukraine.
Kablowie. So they did this before. This was a warning after that gas thing was hacked, remember?
Today,
which they said wasn't the Russians, it was just Russian hackers, not Russian government.
We are reiterating those warnings, and we're doing so based on evolving threat intelligence that the Russian government is exploring options for potential cyber attacks on critical infrastructure in the United States.
It's like they've yanked her out of some kindergarten, some like elite private school kindergarten, and she's there, you know, talking like, okay, children, now get out your naps. It's nap time. You know, it's just like, they're just all weird.
To be clear.
Oh, there's that weird smile. Watch it.
United States. To be clear, there is no
She has these weird smiles. I remember that from the last time.
Certainty. There will be a cyber incident on critical infrastructure. So why am I here?
There it is again. There's that weird smile. Like, watch this. Why am I here?
So why am I here? Because
when she says it, why am I here? She does her Robert De Niro impression. Is this De Niro's daughter? Why am I here? Watch her do it.
On critical infrastructure. So why am I here? Because this is a call to action.
It's a call to action.
And a call to responsibility for all of us. At the President's direction, the administration has worked extensively over the last year to prepare to meet this sort of threat, providing unprecedented...
He's been getting it done. There's no one on the ball like JoJo Magoo. So I did this other thing with CNN, and I'm going to show you that. I did that before this piece, before, like, you know, the beginning of this video, because, you know, I watched it after breakfast, and I knew I wanted to come right after this cyber stuff. But what I say in this piece coming up applies here as well. Why would Putin do that? Why would Putin launch a cyber attack right now? Only if he wanted World War III. Does he want the Americans involved in the Ukraine? Right? Why would Putin do any of it? I'm going to say this with the chemical weapons and nuclear weapons. Why in the world would Putin want to attack the United States right now? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. It's just stupid. Like, of course he wouldn't. You know? Like, he doesn't want to provoke any sort of reason for America and Europeans to come into the Ukraine. It makes no sense, right? It's just not sensible. Like, he's, you know, he's at a disadvantage militarily and then in the world. He's already got these sanctions and things. And so doing a cyber attack would be, like, stupid on his part. On a strategery level. All right, let's go to that CNN piece. So on top of JoJo Magoo telling American troops that what they're going to expect when they end up in the Ukraine, starting World War IV with Russia. This happened. Putin isn't crazy enough to use nukes, or is he?
Part of what you had to say, a chemical or biological attack would terrorize the population, a key objective in Putin's Plan B strategy now that Plan A, a blitzkrieg decapitation of Ukraine's government, has failed. It would also help him conserve his inventory of cruise missiles and bombs, which is shrinking rapidly. Few things would empty a city faster than a cloud of nerve gas. Here, Admiral, is what the president said yesterday on this subject. Watch.
If chemical weapons were used in Ukraine, would that trigger a military response from NATO?
It would trigger a response in kind. Whether or not you're asking whether NATO would cross we'd make that decision at the time.
What he just said there was it would trigger a response in kind, which would mean we would use chemical weapons, right? So if Putin used chemical weapons, then we would use chemical weapons. That's what he just said. Like, you know, that's what in kind means.
.com and answer this week's survey question. I just brought it up with Admiral Stavridis. Should NATO respond? NATO, if Russia uses chemical weapons in Ukraine, you just heard what the president...
They can't wait to get us into World War IV, right? Like, look at this. They're saying, should we go create World War IV with Russia if we find and we tell you that chemical weapons were used? So without us actually knowing anything that's going on with Ukraine, right, with Russia and the Ukraine war, we're just, you know, blindly trusting the media that always lies and a president who is a confirmed liar. They're pushing this out there. If they say Putin uses chemical weapons, just like they said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and America went over and killed 1 million Iraqis and destroyed that country, you know, in various ways, right? Innocent people, you know, people who aren't a part of the government, people who aren't part of the problem, lives wrecked, just like they lied their way into war with Gaddafi. So they lied their way into wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and Libya. You know, Libya was just getting rid of a leader, right? But it was still a legal war based in lies. So that's what America and the UN did in their, you know, in the whole Arab Spring thing. They tried to do it in Syria. They're going to do it in Iran, making up some BS reason that ends up always turning out to be completely false, to create a war that is in America's interest and the UN's interest, and taking away a leader and destroying a country and making innocent people suffer, like with the sanctions where kids starve, right? And so, you know, there's that, right? There's the, you know, whatever that is, right? The past history of America. And now they're saying, well, if we tell you that Russia's using chemical weapons in Ukraine, do you want to send your kids over there to fight in World War IV? Like, listen to these evil MFers. They can't wait to create World War IV. They can't, 3. I'm jumping a World War. Like, just listen to them.
The president had to say on that subject during the course of this trip. I'll bring you the result later this hour.
And see, by asking that question, this is a straw poll. It's not a legitimate poll. Like, they're not asking Americans, do you want World War III? What would it take? And probably pretty much every American, I think it was only 15%, wanted military involvement in the Ukraine. And they've been pushing it hard, showing how the Ukrainians are victims and Putin's such an evil doer. I mean, they're pushing this thing hard. But by asking that question, they're asking you to think about, okay, you know, when is it okay for us to go to war? What would it take? Like, they're almost doing like a poll to, they are doing a poll to find out, okay, what do we got to do on our side? What do we got to fake on our side to get us into war with Russia, right? Like, tell us what it'll take, you know? Okay, so they went from chemical weapons to nuclear weapons. I mean, this is the progression of this, news program here.
If you have nukes, nobody messes with you. That appears to be Russian President Vladimir Putin's not-so-subtle message to the world after invading the non-nuclear weapon state of Ukraine. Just days after the start of the attack in late February, Putin issued an ominous threat to anybody hoping to intervene in the conflict when he put Russian nuclear forces on high alert. The Biden administration, fearing an all-out war with Russia.
Fearing or wanting?
The Biden administration, fearing an all-out...
Featuring, he said it, featuring what? Of World War III?
War with Russia, has since been adamantly opposed to implementing a no-fly zone over Ukraine. You might remember Ukraine gave up its entire nuclear arsenal at the end of the Cold War when it signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1994. That agreement, signed by 191 countries, aims to stop the spread of nuclear weapons and work toward complete nuclear disarmament. In exchange for signing the treaty, security pledges were made to Ukraine by the U.S., Britain, and Russia, nations that had nuclear weapons of their own before the treaty and were allowed to keep them. Now that the...
Why were they allowed to keep them? Oh, we had them before. Like, the people after the treaty, that's just how it works out.
Kremlin's past assurances to Ukraine are seemingly meaningless Will more nations seek to get a nuclear option to protect their own interests? The Washington Post's foreign affairs.
Okay, so there's that. Like, this is all bad news, right? So I was eating breakfast, and I was already fired up. I did a heartfulness narrative before this, so I'm in a fired up mood, you know, for me, like, you know, in terms of these videos. But he says this, right?
Thank you for having me.
More social media reaction from my Smerconish Twitter and Facebook pages and YouTube. If Russia uses WMDs, we have no choice but to intervene. Otherwise, the entire West will look weak, which we are not. There's no choice if Putin chooses that path.
So they chose this response, right? So this guy, you know, he's got a Saturday morning show. He sucks. I don't know what his viewership is. And this comes from either a tweet to me, Smerconish, or a post on my Facebook. You know, so that's what he says there at the bottom. And so this is a random comment that people, you know, leave. Like, I make a comment video. I pick a comment, and usually it's a bad comment that I make fun of, right? And so they're picking this comment because that's what they want other people to think Americans think. Some random person on Facebook or Twitter says to this guy, a CNN watcher, guess what, you guys, if he uses these chemical weapons, we got no choice but to start World War III. There's always a choice, right? And first of all, how do we know that he actually did? Like, this is a person who trusts CNN. If you tell me, if Biden and you tell me, this CNN viewer is saying, if you tell me CNN, or if Biden tells me that this happened, then we got no choice but to go to World War III. Okay, buddy, then you go, right? Like, find out who this MNFer is and send him and, you know, anybody else who thinks like him, right? You know what I mean? Plus, it shows you what CNN wants to, you know, they want a war. That's what they're picking. They're not picking a comment here that's saying, under no circumstances start World War III, you MNFers. I don't care what happens in the Ukraine. Do not start World War III. We invaded a bunch of countries in the Middle East, and Russia didn't try to provoke a war with us. And so, you know, back down. You guys are the warmongers. You know, Joe Biden and his team and his people and people at CNN. So you listen up, MNFers. I'm sure there's comments like that to this poll, and there would be if anybody really watched CNN. They're not pulling something like that. They're pulling somebody who wants to, you know, wants to go to war with Russia or wants to believe CNN and Joe Biden.
Joe Salento, I raised that subject with Admiral Stavridis, and I asked him what would be the justification, the basis for NATO to get involved with a non-NATO country, in this case Ukraine, if there had been, I said, chemical weapons, and that's our survey question today. And he said because they can't be contained. Right? If chemical weapons are launched and target Ukraine, the spread is going to impact potentially a nation like Poland, which is a member of NATO. That was his explanation, which made sense to me.
So this was my reaction. Why would Putin do this, right? I mean, they're pitching this idea here, this ridiculous idea. Putin isn't crazy enough to use nukes, or is he, right? Going back to this original point and this idea of chemical weapons. And so they're saying he's crazy. And they've done this in the past, right? You know who was crazy? Saddam Hussein. You know who else was crazy? Gaddafi. Gaddafi was crazy. Saddam Hussein was crazy. They make these madmen who are dangerous, right? So Gaddafi gave up all his WMDs, and they still took him out. Saddam Hussein didn't have any WMDs, and they lied about that and went and murdered 1 million people, murdered them. This isn't war. This is going into a country that doesn't want a war. And the military backed down in Iraq. They completely folded. Saddam Hussein went into hiding in some hole, and they went and destroyed the country and took over assets and, you know, spent American dollars and lives and, you know, treasure on an illegal war based in lies. Colin Powell going to, you know, the UN and lying about the war in Gaddafi based in lies. The British Parliament coming out and saying, yeah, everything that we told you about the war was a lie, right? The reasons for going in. So this is America's history. This is the UN's history, the last 4 wars, right? That they've said, all right, this person's a madman. We got to get rid of him. And they're saying that about Putin. So it's a familiar pattern of behavior when they want to get rid of a leader, right? And why would Putin use chemical weapons? Why would he do that? Like, what's his motivation? right? You take away that you guys are the alleged authority. You take away that Joe Biden is the president and CNN is the, this media, right? The so-called media. If we don't believe you anymore, and most of us don't, if we know you're liars, JoJo Magoo, right? Like he lied running for president so much so he had to issue an apology. This is this thing where I use this meme where he says I've been dumb, where he took other people's speeches and used them as his own and lied about his own family, like pretended his family, his history was different than it was. And he got caught and had to quit his run for presidency. He was humiliated, embarrassed, and then he said that dumb quote, right? I'll play that here.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been dumb.
I've been dumb, right? And so, they're known liars. Joe Biden has lied his entire career, and the media lies to us all the time, which we know about, right? So you take away that we don't trust you. So you're trying to sell us this idea that Putin might be crazy enough to use nukes or chemical weapons, even though he's been a leader forever. What's changed? Like, why didn't he do it in the past? And why would he do it now when he knows the whole world's watching him, that he is being villainized and that Russia's being villainized, and anything he does there is going to be scrutinized. And World War IV, he said, he said World War III. I think World War III has already happened. That's why I keep on saying World War IV. I think we're in World War III, so I'm already talking about the next one, right? Another one, right? So, not really funny, but funny. So Putin knows if he used chemical weapons, right? Like this is like a police standoff where, somebody has hostages and the police are outside. And as soon as the person starts killing hostages, the police are going to, just go in and, sniper them or whatever it is, right? Like Putin knows that they're looking to get him. Like we know that. I can see it. He can see it, obviously, right? Most people with critical thinking skills can see it. They're out to get Putin. They have been for a number of years, right? And in the past, America has claimed that something's going to happen, then it happens, and they use an excuse to create a war out of some like false flaggy type of thing, right? America's had a past history of done this. Like they've admitted to some of the things, and some of the things are just so obvious that we can see it. And so this is a pattern of behavior. And so Putin knows the whole world's watching him. And if he used chemical weapons or nukes, his country's going to get nuked. I mean, there's going to be World War III, a war that he knows he can't win. And so it would be, zero-sum game type of a situation, right? There's nothing in it for him. And he's never shown any interest in doing these things before. He hasn't been invading countries. They've been, they've had like a hard-on for the guy ever since he blocked them in Syria, right? When Putin stopped them from invading Syria illegally, America and all these countries have been after Russia and has demonized Russia. They did it with Trump, trying to link Trump to Russia. Hillary Clinton did it. And they're all despicable liars, right? There doesn't seem to be any reason. Why would he do that? Why would Putin use chemical weapons or nuclear weapons? Why would he possibly do that? There's zero advantage for him to do it. It just, makes them convince them of him being a villain. Like I've said this to you guys in the truth community, stop acting crazy. Like stop doing things that they can look at you, the whole QB stuff. Like they want to make us crazy. They want to say we're crazy, right? Don't give them that. Don't, act in a crazy way. Don't come up with crazy things you can't prove. Don't make wild accusations. Don't get emotional. Stay calm and state your truth in a calm way. Don't let them, don't feed into their profiling of you of being crazy. And Putin, like, I'm not a Russian fan. I'm not a Putin fan. I'm not on their side. Like, I'm not on anybody's side in this thing. I'm on humanity's side or whatever it is, right? And World War III is going to happen one way or another, and I've accepted it. But, like, the lies. You're lying to us. The CNN's lying to us. Biden's lying to us, right? I mean, just all these things. They're liars who lie. Like, we know this. There's no reason for him to do that. There's no, like, oh, he was crazy. He's got to be crazy. He's a madman. Who's a madman? Libya. Gaddafi's a madman. And Saddam Hussein's a madman. They're madmen. We got, they're madmen. What can you do? You can't, you're dealing with a madman. Like, it's some bad B movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. The guy who wants to screw your freedom.
Screw your freedom.
But from proven liars, this doesn't make any sense. what makes more sense is that you real guys really want war, and you're going to make up some BS stuff. If it isn't this, it's going to be about, you know, like it's going to be hacking, the hacking thing, or it's going to be this, right? And so just stop it. Like, you know, it's embarrassing. Like, you know, don't drag us into this. You know, he's talking to us. This isn't about Putin. This is about them lying to us. You know, we're tired of you lying to us. You want war, just say it. Just say you want war. Stop being the victim. Stop trying to be the hero. Say that you want war. Say that our economy's collapsing. We got to have World War III. Tough titty for the rest of you guys. We're doing this. You know, it's the only way to keep the system going. Just be honest about it. I don't care about, you know, it's going to happen one way or another. Just don't try to, you know, treat us like we're children in some, like, you know, ridiculous level, low IQ, double-digit IQ, weak sheeple-like people. Treat us with some respect and just tell us the frickin' truth. Like, why, you know, stop lying about all these things. Stop trying to, you know, be the good guys or the heroes or whatever. Just say the truth, right? We have to go to World War III with Russia for what? To save the economy or whatever it might be. Save your power. Just be honest about it, right? Don't try to, you know, bring us along. We're not buying it anymore. The people that fight your wars, the Republicans, they're not buying it, right? The people, the Republican children, the patriots, they're not, you know, buying it. You're not selling, you know, something that people are going to buy, right? You've been caught lying too many times. And so you're going to make this happen, then just make it happen. You don't have to create some big deception. Just say what has to happen. Like, you know, just get everyone to knuckle under to your tyranny. Stop, you know, buying us flowers after, you know, you are us, right? Like, it's just, you know, we're tired of it. Like, we're just tired of the lies, tired of the BS. You know, it's going to happen, but at least, you know, do it honestly. So Cory Booker went on a T-Bone rant. I'll show you the T-Bone stuff in a moment. And I don't care about this. Like, I'm not a Republican. I'm not on your side, you right-wing truthers. We're not the same. I just want to make this clear. I mock the Democrats and the left a lot more because they have all the power. They, you know, the right wing has been diminished, the Trumpers, all that stuff. And clearly the left wing with social media, it's not real left-wing stuff. It's just that part of the paradigm. But I don't care about this political stuff. Katanja Brown Jackson, like, you know, I watched a little of this thing. Some people sent me some stuff. I don't care. I didn't care about the Kavanaugh thing because it's all, you know, they're all controlled, right? It's the left-right paradigm. But there is funny stuff that happens. And so, again, I don't have any, you know, I don't care about the outcome of this thing, whatever happens. But this is hilarious because Cory Booker is really funny, right, in a way that he doesn't intend to be. And he gets really funny here. He tries to be real emotional and really, like, you know, I don't know who would fall for this, but, you know, he had this imaginary friend named T-Bone, and we're going to intertwine this with JoJo Magoo's imaginary friend named Cornpop, and then Cory Booker's thing he does here, and it's just going to be, I mean, I'm gonna find it funny, right? I'm laughing already.
Any one of us senators could yell as loud as we want that Venus can't return a serve. We could yell as loud as we want that Beyonce can't sing. We could yell as much as we want that astronaut Mae Jemison didn't go all that high.
Okay, Cory, we see where you're going with this. He's talking about successful, famous African-American women and this woman here. And he's, you know, he's going to play this particular card here.
But you know what? They got nothing to prove.
Except for me saying that they have something to prove by bringing it up, right?
As it says in the Bible, let the work I've done speak for me.
Exactly. Let's bring the Bible into this thing.
Well, you have spoken.
You've spoken.
You started speaking as a little girl.
You did. You started talking as a little girl. I was there. I saw you. You started to say words. You started to speak as a little girl.
Watching that man right there try to raise a family and study law.
Your dad, you know, who I've just met, but it's like an inspiration to us all.
While your mama supported everybody.
Your mama, your dad, they're inspirations to everybody.
You spoke in high school when you started distinguishing yourself.
You spoke. You said words in high school, too. You didn't stop that speaking thing when you were a little kid. You kept on using those words and speaking words and saying words.
You know what you said when they told you couldn't go to Harvard? Watch me.
I'll go to Harvard with all those elitist pieces of crap at Harvard, you know, with all those horrible, controlling, you know, club members that are ruining this world that come from Harvard. I'm going there. I'm going to go with the slime and the venomous creatures that come out of Harvard and possibly Yale. I might go to Yale, too. Harvard and Yale.
I went to law school. I didn't serve on the law review. You did.
I know, but I did something. I went to law school, but I did this. I'm doing this. But, you know, you're doing better than me because, I mean, you did this thing I didn't do. But let's talk about me for a little bit, too, because, you know, I'm no slouch either.
I didn't clerk at every level of the federal court. You clerked for a Supreme Court justice, one widely respected on both sides, which really shaped you.
Really shaped you. You're like a shapeshifter. So let's go to Cornpop because he's done this before. Let's go first to JoJo Magoo's friend, imaginary friend, named Cornpop, and then we'll go to T-Bone.
That made me aware when I was in law school, proudly for Hollywood.
He was in law school, too. That's just a coinkydink. He went to a inner city pool that he was a lifeguard at in Delaware.
Proudly for your dad, first African-American state senator in the state of Delaware. Everything about.
Woo!
And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs.
It's still funny now. He's got hairy legs. Okay, let's establish this thing. He was a lawyer, and he would sit on the stand, and he's got hairy legs. All these things. We're learning more about JoJo Magoo here.
That turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair.
Okay, so this sounds more like a confession than a political speech. You creepy MFer.
Come back up again. They look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Yeah, you did, MF. We'll come back to Cornpop. Cornpop's coming up next. So not to be outdone, we had Cory Booker, who has an imaginary friend named T-Bone, also an inspirational figure, who was a drug dealer and gang member, but also inspirational.
Important challenge. That rift. T-Bone comes to me after
T-Bone comes to him
I get elected and says to me, Cory, can we go for a ride?
T-Bone, Cory.
And I say, T-Bone, your car or mine?
T-Bone, your car or mine? T-Bone, you want your car or mine? So we'll come back to these guys.
You left there and you went to private practice, and you know what you found? This is what you told me. That you had those tough choices that working moms have to make, the demands of a private law firm, raising your kids. It just didn't add up. You went before this Senate 3 times in a bipartisan manner. God bless America. We don't do that much stuff bipartisan around here.
Not around these parts.
You went to become a public defender because you wanted to understand all aspects of the law.
You did, like you just did it. And you did it. You just were doing everything. You were a public defender.
Does that?
Who does it? You do that. I don't know who does that. You do that.
Understand all aspects of the law. Who does that?
You do that.
We live in a society that's very materialistic sometimes, very, very consumeristic. You went into, do people become public defenders for the money?
Nope. Do the people go to Harvard for the money? Yep.
No.
Nope. No, they don't.
Your family and you speak to service, service, service.
Service, service, service. You know who else speaks to service? T-Bone and Cornpop.
And I tell you what, the men, they're now all men, the guys I work with down here, and they're all guys at the time. They're all good men. Most of them made an awful lot of themselves. And Earl Larkin had a rough time. And some of you knew Earl. I came back as a public defender. I came back to Delaware and I got a...
Who does that? Who comes back as a public defender? Who does that? He do that. He do that. He could have been a lucrative law firm, but he went to be as a public defender. Who do that? He do that.
Fancy job with the oldest law firm in the state. But the city was burning. It was burning down here. And I couldn't do it. So I quit and became a public defender.
He did that. He doesn't do it for money. He took the fanciest law firm in town, and he was making lots of money, but he didn't want to make money. He doesn't like money like his son, this crackhead son, Hunter. Hunter doesn't like money. He just gets free jobs for foreign governments so he can smoke his crack. He's not into money and strippers. And this guy too. This guy's not into money. He's not materialistic. Like, who do that? He did the same thing. He took a very lucrative job in the private sector as one of the elite law firms, but he said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go be a public defender. Who do that?
You went to become a public defender because you wanted to understand all aspects of the law. Who does that? We live in a society that's very materialistic sometimes, very...
JoJo Magoo do it too.
And I very nervously get into his car, and we drive off of Martin Luther King Boulevard up South Orange Avenue. And South Orange Avenue is one of the stranger streets in America, because as soon as you punch out of Newark, it's suddenly like going in the Wizard of Oz, from black and white to Technicolor.
It's just like that. That's how it is in New Jersey.
And suddenly there's these huge homes. In fact, children from Newark's parents who live just maybe 100 yards away, sometimes they'll use false addresses in South Orange or Montclair.
Who do that? Who use false addresses?
To sneak their children into the better schools.
Why do that? Are they materialistic?
Those towns have people that follow around these minority children, see where they're going home, and then we'll remove them, send them back to Newark schools, and bill them for the tuition for the time that they took them there. This is a wonderful country we live in.
Exactly. When kids try to fake their way into a school that they don't belong to, they'll try to actually hold them accountable for that and make them pay for the education that they're stealing. That's a wonderful country we have here.
And so we drove into South Orange, and we pull over to the side of the road, and I sit there, and T-Bone tells me, you got to get me out of here. And I'm like,
well, what am I going to do that, T-Bone?
Okay, T-Bone, I got some programs, some plans. You see, we at that...
Okay, T-Bone. I think everybody in the world needs to, at one time in their life, be able to say the phrase, okay, T-Bone.
You need a nickname that makes people light up.
What nickname's that?
You mean like Liza? I was thinking T-Bone.
Exactly, T-Bone. He needs a name. Is this T-Bone? This looks like it might be T-Bone.
And I'm telling you right now, I'm not letting anybody in the Senate steal my joy.
He's got joy. He just took some ecstasy before he got on there.
I told you this at the beginning. I'm embarrassed.
You should be. I'm embarrassed for you.
It happened earlier today. I just look at you and I start getting full of emotion.
Woo! Ew. He gets tingly in his legs.
I'm jogging this morning.
Because he jogs. I'm in shape. I exercise.
And I'm at the end of the block I live on. And I get terrified because I put my music on loud when I'm jogging, trying to
yeah, I do.
block out the noise of the heart attack I'm having.
You're funny, too. He's got jokes.
And this woman comes up on me, practically tackles me, an African-American woman. And the look on her eye, she just wanted to touch me because I'm sitting so close to you.
So we went into a back room. So what I'm saying is, you're getting me laid. What I'm saying, you're being nominated for Supreme Court is getting me laid. Speaking of getting laid, where's Cornpop?
First trial I had, I walked into court as a public defender with another guy named Eddie Sobocinski, a defender.
Is that guy T-Bone?
I'd only been admitted to the bar 1 week, and Earl Larkin was in chains around his ankles and on his wrist, and they were chained together, so on a belt. And he said, "Who's going to try the Larkin case?" I just got started. And he was aptly named. His name was Judge Stiftel.
He's a Stiftel.
And
like, you know, he gets a Stiftel when kids used to rub his legs.
He said, Sobocinski said, "Well, that's my colleague. He just joined the public defender's office." He said, will you in fact defend him?" So he turned to Larkin and said, He'll defend him. Like, he forgot that the defend you. I said, whoa, Your Honor. I know nothing about the case. He said, "I'll give you till tomorrow, but you draw the jury today." And he looked at Larkin and he said, "You mind if he represents you?" And I'll never forget what he said. I learned a lot. He said, and I mean it sincerely. He looked at me and he said, "One hunky's just as bad as any other. I'll take whoever you send me."
He's a honky. Joe, that was back when Joe was a honky.
And here's what I want to tell you about Earl. Here's what I want to tell you about the neighborhood and the heart. I defended him. He got beat up right on the other side of the field here. He walking along the tracks. He was a sailor in a sailor's uniform, the guy who he beat up and robbed.
Who got beat up and robbed?
And so I thought he was innocent. I kept the jury out 5 hours, but they convicted him. And I felt so bad. So I go down to the old prison all the time. They had little wooden tables and two little chairs in a big dome you'd sit under where you'd be interviewed. And I was sitting there, Councilwoman, and the third time saying, "I'm appealing this case." And finally he took the table, he flipped it up, and he said, jumped up, and the guards came and grabbed him. He said, "Don't you understand, Joe? I did it. I did it." But here's the point. He cared about me. This is a man who saw me bleeding because I saw this guy going to jail and I thought he was innocent.
What are you talking about, bro? We're not even at the Cornpop stuff yet.
Point had gotten the drug dealers away from the front of the building. We at that point had gotten the slumlord convicted in federal court. Ms. Jones danced that day. We got the local school adopted by Prudential. We now have a health center there. We got the crack house torn down. And now here's T-Bone, to me.
Here's T-Bone.
Feeling incredibly confident. He says to me, "You got to help me get out of here." And I'm like, "T-Bone, I got some programs, some plans. I know some things we can do." He goes, "You don't understand something." And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, and he basically explains to me that he has warrants out for his arrest and that they're closing in on him. And
they're closing in. You got to get him out of this. He's committed a lot of crimes. They got warrants, so you got to get me out of town since you're going to be nominating Supreme Court judges and stuff. And so you got to help me avoid the arrest and the warrants. Like, that's why I'm coming here for you.
I hadn't seen him for a few weeks, and I'm now listening to him tell me this story. And suddenly T-Bone starts telling me his story.
T-Bone starts telling him his story.
T-bone steak.
T-bone steak.
For lunch? Well, I am just a T-bone kind of guy.
He is a T-bone kind of guy.
And tell me what it meant to her to watch you sitting where you're sitting. And you did not get there because of some left-wing agenda?
So, Cornpop lover JoJo Magoo said he was going to appoint an African-American woman. Now, she's part of the club. She went to Harvard. We'll get into more about her, situation. Her dad was a lawyer, right? So, she's part of the club. But the very definition of an agenda is when you make a promise to appoint someone based on their race for political reasons and a left-wing agenda, right?
You didn't get here because of some dark money groups. You got here how every black woman in America who's gotten anywhere has done. By being, like Ginger Rogers said, "I did everything Fred Astaire did, but backwards in heels."
You're using Ginger Rogers? She got there just by being a Ginger Rogers.
And so I'm just sitting here.
Look, he doesn't look happy. He looks defensive. She's crying like, oh my God, you shut up.
Saying nobody's stealing my joy. Nobody's going to make me angry, especially not people that are called in a conservative magazine demagogic.
Demagogic?
For what they're bringing up.
Bringing up demagogues.
This doesn't hold water. I'm not.
But the demagogues don't hold water over here.
I'm not going to let my joy be stolen because.
Don't steal my joy.
I know you and we appreciate something that we get that a lot of my colleagues don't. I know Tim Scott does.
Is it herpes? Tell me it's not herpes.
When I first came to this place, I was the 4th black person ever popularly elected to the United States Senate. And I still remember a lot of mixed people, white folks, black folks work here. But at night, when people are in line to come in to clean this place, the percentage of minorities shift a lot. And so I'm walking here, first week I'm here, and somebody who's been here for decades doing the urgent work of the Senate, but it's the unglamorous work that goes on no matter who's in offices. The guy comes up to me, all he wants to say, I can tell, is, I'm so happy you're here. But he comes up and he can't get the words out. And
you can't get the words out. The words, I'm so happy you're here. He just couldn't get them out.
This man, my elder, starts crying.
Was that T-Bone?
And I just hugged him, and he just kept telling me.
Is this a real man or imaginary man? Like, is it a real man?
It is so good to see you here. It's so good to see you here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And so is this a real person or is it like an imaginary friend? You got a lot of imaginary friends?
There's character, even in great problems. There's so much character in this neighborhood.
You have this criminal, and he did it, and he tried to get off from it, and he lied to me as his lawyer. He didn't tell me he did it, and I was appealing his case, but he actually had done it, and he did it right over there. But when he, realized that I was, going to embarrass myself even more by trying to get him off when he's really guilty, he flipped the table over, and he said, Joe, I did it, Joe. And the crime that he admitted to was that he beat up a serviceman, a guy who was in the Navy, and robbed him. Right? JoJo, he's continuing his story here. He's talking about what great character this guy had, right?
There was so much character back then, too. So many people didn't get a shot. So many people didn't get a shot.
But Joe, when you become president, you can make sure everybody gets a shot. Kaboom!
Who could be standing right where Lisa's standing today? A lot earlier. Could be standing where I'm standing today. Let me end by saying, I was a pretty darn good lifeguard. Yeah, man. I taught swimming, too. And I remember going over, we used to play the other pools, and we played basketball at lunchtime, remember? We went over to Riverside, we played.
No, we didn't, because none of us were born in the 20s. We don't remember.
And someone on the other team threw the ball to me by accident. And they looked at me and said, oh, God, I thought you were on my team. I'm thinking, I'm the only white boy within 20 miles.
He's a honky.
Remember, I'd get invited down to Baby Grand. I walk in and say, who's this guy? And they say, he's ours. He's ours. You've always had my back. The neighborhood's always had my back. And God willing, I've always had your back.
Exactly. A lot of people having each other's backs.
Which, again, is the same story for the first 12 years or so of my dad's first 12 years. Born to a single mother. Born poor. My father used to say, I can't afford to be, when I was young, I couldn't afford to be poor. I was just PO, P-O. The other two letters, couldn't afford them yet.
You couldn't afford, he couldn't afford an or. He just couldn't afford the O and the R. He just wasn't rich enough to afford the O and the R. Because you got to buy a vowel. He's on Wheel of Fortune.
Same thing. Him and his mother had him. Mother couldn't take care of him. My grandmother, biological grandmother, couldn't take care of my dad. They both were taken into the community. The community that absorbed T-Bone was a community of gang members. And T-Bone's life spiraled down from there. Here he's telling me this story about his childhood, going through it in detail, and I'm not hearing him anymore. I'm looking at my dad.
He's not listening to T-Bone. He's having a hallucination. He's not looking at his imaginary friend, but he's hallucinating his dad now.
A guy who's evidenced more genius than me. A guy that was controlling a business, probably making more revenue than I'll ever control.
Exactly. He was a very affluent drug dealer.
And sitting there looking at each other, he's telling me the story, I'm off thinking about my dad, and how that this glorious movement, the civil rights movement that began to make real on the American promise, had gotten twisted to the point that there we were sitting there.
A couple of a real guy, an imaginary friend, and my delusionary hallucination of my dad. All three of us are there.
Young black men sitting there looking at each other. And I began to think to myself, you know what, this guy looks like me. This guy could be my dad. And
T-Bone, are you my dad?
Suddenly he looks at me, snapping me back to focus with the same ferocity with which he threatened my life. Same ferocity. And then he says to me, and he bursts into tears.
T-Bone.
And starts crying, this powerful, macho, young black male sobbing into my dashboard.
Love that T-bone.
He loves that T-Bone.
I love my brother Tim Scott. We could write a dissertation on our disagreements. He gave the best speech on race. I wish I could have given good of a speech. But talking to the challenges and indignities that are still faced. And you're here.
I thought, wait, you're not going to cry. She's not going to steal. She's going to steal his joy. He's about to cry.
I was in the White House with my Democratic colleagues, and I'm in my joy. I can't help it.
He is. He's in his joy. He's about to cry and ruin his own joy.
And the president's asking our advice. Who should we nominate and whatever? And I look at Kamala, and we have a knowing glance, which we've had.
Which we've had since the beginning, when we used to laugh at JoJo Magoo. I've showed you that video before. I'm not going to show you it here. When him and Kamala were laughing at JoJo Magoo.
Had for years, when she and I used to sit on this end of this committee at times. And then I try to get out to the president what it means. What it means.
It's just so frickin' fake. He's just so fake.
And I want
It's just performance art, right? Bad performance art.
Tell you, when I look at you, this is why I get emotional.
He's wrecking his joy. He's losing his joy. He's about to cry.
And remember Boom Boom Cannon and a few other guys that worked here as well. And we sit there and we talk, and they'd ask me questions, because I really was the only white guy they really knew.
They did. They asked him questions.
And they'd ask me questions about everything, I mean, things that just startled me. I remember one time, I won't mention which lifeguard, said, do I have a jerry can, a 5-gallon can for gasoline?
I won't mention, because this is privileged information.
And I said, no, I don't. I said, but what do you need it for? He said, we're going down to see my grandmama in North Carolina. We can't stop at most gas stations. They won't let us stop at most gas stations. I learned a lot. And I learned that it makes a difference. This was the diving board area.
This diving board area over here.
And I was one of the guards, and there weren't allowed to, there was a 3-meter board. And if you fell off sideways, you landed on the darn cement over there.
Like if you didn't jump into the water off the diving board, you landed on the cement. Then we had a big problem. We had to teach the kids, you know, when you're on the diving board, dive into the water, because the cement hurts more.
And Cornpop was a bad dude.
He was a bad dude. Cornpop was a bad dude.
Because the rest of the quote there is simple. She says, we live in a distraught present. Though we've had the courage to deplore it, we've failed to heal the rift that exists between the middle-class black lawyer and the urban dweller. That rift between me and T-Bone.
T-Bone!
In fact, you might as well call me. That sounds good. I'll have one too.
What? What's this guy doing?
What? Did you having a T-Bone? I love him. Well, then we should call you T-Bone.
T-Bone.
I'm sorry, you're a person that is so much more than your race and gender. You're a Christian, you're a mom, you're an intellect, you love books, but for me, I'm sorry, it's hard for me not to look at you and not see my mom.
His mom. He remembers his dad reminds him of T-Bone, and she reminds him of his mom. It's just the way it works with Corey.
Not to see my cousins, one of them who had to come here and sit behind you.
Corey, you're stealing your own joy.
She had to have your back. I see my ancestors and yours. Nobody's going to steal the joy of that woman in the street, or the calls that I'm getting, or the texts. No.
What about Cornpop? Will Cornpop steal it?
And he ran a bunch of bad boys. And I did. And back in those days, to show how things have changed, one of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. And so he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off. Well, he came off, and he said, I'll meet you outside. My car, these were all public housing behind it. My car, there was a gate out here. I parked my car outside the gate. And he said, I'll be waiting for you. He was waiting for 3 guys in straight razors.
I'm kind of a superhero, as you might know, but I can't take on 3 other guys in Cornpop, and they all got straight razors.
Not a joke. There's a guy named Bill Wright, Mouse, the only white guy, and he did all the pools. He was the mechanic.
He's the white guy who did all the pools. He was the only white guy who did all the pools.
And I said, what am I going to do? He said, come down here in the basement where mechanics, where all the pool filter is. You know the chain, there used to be a chain that went across.
Yeah, I know it. I was alive in the 1920s. We were, all these kids here. We know about the chain.
Deep end. And he cut off a 6-foot length of chain. He folded up. He said, you walk out.
I'll cut you off a piece of chain so you could go have a gang fight. Right? This guy is public employee.
A chain.
Like, you know, he didn't say call the cops or anything.
And you walk to the car and say, you may cut me, man, but I'm going to wrap this chain around your head. I said, you kidding me? He said, no, if you don't come back. And he was right. So I walked out with the chain. They're going to put you all back in chains.
So you were walking out with a chain to Cornpop and a bunch of African-American young men as the only white guy in the neighborhood, and you were bringing a chain over to them.
I walked up to my car, and in those days, you used to remember the straight razor. You'd bang them on the curb, get them rusty, put them in a rain barrel, get them rusty.
Yeah, we remember that because we were all born in the 20s.
And I looked at
shave your belly with a rusty razor.
At him, but I was smart then. I said, first of all,
but not now. Back then, I was pretty sharp.
When I tell you get off the board, you get off the board, and I'll kick you out again. But I shouldn't have called you, Esther Williams. I apologize for that. I apologize, but I didn't know that apology was going to work. He said, you apologize to me? I said, I apologize for that, not for throwing you out, but I apologize for what I said. He said, okay, closed the straight razor, and my heart began to beat again. I came down here because
It's Cornpop. That's his Cornpop story.
No, we shouldn't.
T-Bone! 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 T-Bone!
Was inches we sat there, but I felt so alienated that there was a gulf as wide as the Grand Canyon between us, and I could not reach out to save this young man. We drove back down to Brick Towers. He got out of the car, and I've never seen him again since that day. He disappeared into the streets.
That would imply that you actually saw T-Bone in the first place, and he wasn't your imaginary friend.
Nobody's going to steal that joy. You have earned this spot. You are worthy. You are a great American. Your hero is Constance Baker Motley. Mine, she has sat on my desk for my offices that I've held. She's my icon of America.
His icon of America.
Her name is Harriet Tubman. There is a love in this country that is extraordinary.
It's just a very loving country. I see it all the time. There's just so much love in America right now.
You admitted it about your parents. They loved this nation, even though there were laws preventing them from getting together. When they were loving, there were laws in this country that would have prevented you from marrying your husband. It wasn't that long ago. It was last generation.
I want to break in here. I'm in the editing portion, but I didn't know it was this far along. I guess got a little bit more of Corey. And then I want to come back to this idea that she couldn't marry her husband. It was against the rules just a generation ago. And that isn't true. And I want to get into that because that's interesting. But let's watch the end of this thing here.
But they didn't stop loving this country, even though this country didn't love them back.
Exactly. They love America, and America don't love them back. All right, I got to move on. So, when Cory Booker talked about that she wouldn't be able to marry her husband some time ago, right? I didn't notice it. I mean, I noticed it, but I didn't think about it until later, right? So I'm like, well, he must be a white guy, right? And so Cory Booker's whole thing was about her being African-American and a woman. I'll come back to that, but you can see that's this whole thing, right? And so I looked up this guy, and his name is, here's the article, Patrick Graves Jackson. And so they met in college, which I'm assuming was Harvard, and he's now a doctor. And so he's a doctor from Harvard. He's a doctor. So he went to Georgetown University. I don't know if she went to Georgetown and Harvard. I don't know. Whatever. He looks a lot like her handler here. Like right here, this picture here. And she introduces him here.
And speaking of unconditional love, I would like to introduce you to my husband of 25 years, Dr. Patrick Jackson. I have no doubt that without him by my side from the very beginning of this incredible professional journey, none of this would have been possible. We met in college more than 3 decades ago, and since then, he's been the best husband, father, and friend.
There's people talking about his socks. I noticed when I was searching for him.
I could ever imagine.
He's crying. It's getting emotional. The socks in his, I think this must be their daughter, right? And so, Cory Booker, and I don't know at what part, because I'm doing this part and then I'm going to insert it into the narrative with Cory Booker, right? But Cory Booker was talking about how she gave up the lucrative law practice at a high-ranking law firm to be a public defender, and I think that's later on after this. But she was married to a Harvard doctor, right? She's part of a club. And all these guys, Clarence Thomas is married to a white woman. Kamala Harris is married to a white guy, Dougie Fresh, right? So to characterize this hearing about her being a black woman, which is what Cory Booker is doing this whole time, how great it is, how happy it is that this woman, this black woman, making it about her being black, almost making it sound like her being a black woman gave her superpowers and she had a harder, tougher climb than a white woman or certainly a white man or a man in general or whatever it is, right? And almost like saying that it's better and rooting for her because of her color, right? I mean, that's what he's saying. But if the Republicans came out against her and said that she was lesser than because of her color, that would be racism, right? And so, Cory Booker's the one who's bringing the color of her skin and her gender into this thing. I don't know if the other Democrats are doing that or not. But the thing is, if this was a Trump nominee, if Trump had nominated a black woman, Cory Booker wouldn't have been as happy. See, it's the politics of the thing. It's the optics, because the Republicans are going to vote against her because she's a Democrat, and the Democrats are going to vote with her, just like the stupid Kavanaugh thing. You see this every time. It's people picking sides and either, making a person a saint or a demon, a villain or a hero, based in whatever political party. I mean, it's so remedial. It's so hard to watch. And Cory Booker's whole thing here isn't about her qualifications or whether she deserves to be on the Supreme Court. And it never is, right? It's just political and it's, optics. And Cory Booker's just doing a presentation here, right? She's part of a club. All these guys, all these people, all these women and men, she's gone through Harvard. She's connected with all these elite level people, right? Her husband's a doctor from one of these Georgetown, one of these prominent Ivy League type of old money schools, right? They're all connected. They're all, to get in, you got to be part of the club. And this thing that Cory Booker's doing is just, you know, it's just performance art. I talk about that later in this narrative. So I made that part of the voiceover before, you know, I watched or edited the video, so I thought it was earlier on. But I've already talked about Cory Booker doing performance art. It's all performance art. It's so fake. Everything they talks about, like, you know, him talking about having, oh, I have Harriet Tubman. I have a statue of her on my desk, and, you know, getting all emotional. It's all performance. It's all playing a character, and it's bad acting. They don't even hire, like, good actors. Like, Cory Booker's a bad actor. JoJo Magoo is, I mean, the guy can't even, you know, string together a set of sentences and stick to a script and read, you know, a prompter anymore, right? And he was never great. He's just a liar. He comes out lies all the time. I mean, they're deceivers, right? You know, and Cory Booker bringing up that she couldn't have even married her husband a generation ago. So I was born in 1964, and my best friend in high school was a biracial kid. Like, he said to me he was mulatto, and I didn't know what that meant, right? But his mom was German, his dad was black. And, you know, he received some racist stuff, but it was not like, you know, threatening racist stuff. Like, he did well in school. He was treated, you know, well by the teacher. He didn't have any complaints about that, right? And, you know, that was my generation. You know, my brother married an African-American woman, and his son, my nephew, married an African-American woman. You see lots of biracial kids now. You see athletes like, you know, Patrick Mahomes, or you see all these athletes who are biracial, right? Light skin. And, you know, you see that more and more. Or you see like a blending of like Asian and African-American, or, you know, a blending of like black and Hispanic, or whatever it might be. There's more and more intermarrying of people, intermarrying of faith, right? Jewish people marrying Catholic people, like Jon Stewart's married a Catholic woman, right? You have all these kind of things. You know, so much so that, and I talk about the internal world all the time. Like, my channel's about the internal world. What kind of soul, what kind of spiritual person are you? What do you have inside? But they keep on bringing it back to the periphery and superficial stuff, right? I mean, it just, you know, these are all the people here are part of the same club. Cory Booker and the rest of them. Every person in Washington, D.C. is about money and power and prestige and fame and all these things. Just like with Hollywood, they're all the same personality types, many times narcissists or sociopaths or something else. Where's the saint? Show me the saint. Show me someone with a, you know, real heart of gold. Actually, a heart of gold would be a bad thing. Like, show me with somebody with a, you know, a saintly heart, a soft heartfulness. You know, someone does heartfulness and has a soft heart, a soft, loving heart. Show me that, because such people don't exist in the venomous creatures. You know, they wouldn't want to be in Washington, D.C. with the corruption. And, you know, they're pushing for World War III. Like, you can see it in the beginning of the video, these heartless ghouls, and they're all the same internally. Yeah, they might look different. They might have different skin colors, or, you know, they might be, you know, some difference in their lifestyle or whatever it is, right? You know, they're trying to, all this fake diversity that's all about the periphery. But inside, they're all the same, right? They're not good people, and they're, you know, power-hungry people running a collapsing system and trying to do what's best for themselves and the people, you know, the entities and the handlers and the controllers that take care of them, right? You know, so, you know, I mean, it's just a joke. And the performance stuff, the line, it's just so icky. Anyways, I had a whole bunch of other stuff to get to, but this video is a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. So that other stuff is going to sort of, you know, it's going to be like a follow-up, because I was going to, you know, reference some of these earlier clips in my video I'll make tomorrow, so they'll go hand in hand, but whatever. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important from the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.